and welcome to Walker Tea Review. You see in front of me today, I've got a lot of my tea children out here to play, and I'm going to be doing something that I haven't done in quite a while, and that's going to be a tea comparison. We're going to be looking at two teas, and you could argue that they are the same tea. They're actually two pu'ers, same company, same recipe, same year, but they've been stored differently. So we're going to look, really it's a comparison of what happens when you store pu'ers in different ways. So let's go ahead and get these ready. Water's been brought to a boil, so we want to make sure to get this get water on them as soon as possible. First off, I'm putting in a little bit of my, this is a dry stored pu'er. Now dry storage, I need a little bit more. Dry storage often involves, that's too big of a piece, so I'm going to hold on to that. Often involves, is my understanding, the best research I've been able to come across, and correct me if you find more, but dry storage involves humidity levels at, say, lower than 80%, a little bit more air circulation, so that and the idea here is that by doing so, you are getting more of the natural, original aromas of that tea. Again, these are both teas, these are both packaged, or I should say pressed into cakes in 2000. So on the other side here, also over the year 2000, as I said, this is traditional storage. And traditional storage often means, again, as best as I can tell, what they're describing here is a wet storage, sometimes called a wet storage of 80% humidity or higher. Sometimes associated with Hong Kong because of the humidity of the air in Hong Kong, South China, like that. Traditional storage can often have some of the more musty or mushroom type components to the tea. Both are designed to mellow out and kind of smooth off the taste, because if you're starting with a green pu'er, a sheng pu'er, you want to convert those, let the oxidation take place, well, I should say the aging. There's a bacterial fermentation type process going on in there. The bacteria are still acting and reacting with the tea leaves, and they're mellowing flavors. They're creating new flavor components there. So that's what's happening. Let me kind of talk about these teas. As I mentioned, both of these are Menghais. They are year 2000. The recipe number, or you may hear it as Menghai 7542. Again, in my left hand here, I have the traditional store on the left side. On my right side here, I have the dry stored. So those are what those two are. If you go to GrandTeas, these teas are provided by GrandTeas. GrandTea has the, let's see, okay, the dry store here, $22 for 100 grams. The traditional stored, $23 for 100 grams. So very similar in price range. You can get cakes. These are usually offered in complete cakes, pu'er cakes, which are, I want to say, around 370 grams. Okay, but we've had enough time to let these steep. I'm going to have to get my spoon out of the way. Got a lot of equipment here. I'm going to pour the dry first because I added my water to it first. And then quickly, of course, move on. I have done it with two hands, not just for the sake of consistency. I did serve this one, or pour water into this one first, but I guess I could, do the two-hand pour. Not always as smooth and fluent when you're doing two-handed like that. All right, here we go. Roughly the same volume of dry leaf was used, or the same amount of, I should say, and that was just kind of an eyeball examination, as you saw. No thorough examination or weighing process to confirm that those were exactly the same amounts of wet leaf rather. Let's go. But that reminds me. Let's take a look just for a moment at dry leaf and talk about those. Okay, the dry store. The dry store does have a kind of a dampness type component aspect to it. Again, dry generally meaning, as I said, less than, if I understand, less than 80% humidity was the number that I most often saw. Just by looking at these leaves, these are some of the larger leaf portions that I've seen in a while. I get a little bit of kind of drabness, dullness to this. There is still some dark green component to this. Again, that's coming from a green tea. You can still see some of a fuzzy type component aspects here and there, where these were delicate early leaves that still had the down or fuzz on them. Okay, moving over just for a moment to the traditional store. Just from looking at this this piece here that was broken off of a cake, looks like. At first impression, these pieces look smaller, and that could have been just where it was taken from in the cake. Those numbers, like 7542, those represent recipes that say this amount of this size or grade or quality or source of leaf, this much gets put in, mixed with this other size, grade, source, and so on until you have that recipe. And this one is markedly more musty, humid, damp, wet basement, cool, wet basement kind of cool, damp basement smells to it. So that so far, yes, that one does have more of those kind of components to it. Let's move now to wet leaf here for just a moment. Let's talk about again. We're doing our dry here first on my right. Yes, a little bit of humidity there, a little bit of a light musty, but you can work under that. You can smell under that and get some of the green leaf type components. And green leaf here being quite mellow, quite mild. It's not like a fresh green tea where you're going to get strong vegetal. This is how should I say? This is kind of like a root type of vegetable. There's more of the root component here. Okay, compared to traditional storage here. Closer, more mushroom-like in its aspect. So it's more like wet earth compared to more of a vegetable that has been pulled out of the wet damp earth, cool wet damp earth. So looking at what does that mean for these leaves? Again, dry storage here. These have loosened up. They're coming apart quite easily. I mean, you're getting let me see here. Okay, you're getting leaves here connected to the stem. They're not fully intact. The leaf's about an inch in length. Let me pull out a couple more. You're getting others that are longer, crumpled. Got more of a greenish gray. I mean, I've seen this kind of reminds me of some of your roasted oolongs. Have the kind of a dark grayish green color like that. Compared to, just a moment, let me kind of, because you do get some kind of leaf and a bud sets in this as well, and they're noticeable compared to the traditional storage. Still, I'm moving it around my fingers because it still is a pretty compact clump there, and as I pull this out and kind of look at this, I'm getting pieces of leaf here and there. I'm not getting as much of the solid. Still looking, but no, this is lots of shreds, portions, torn leaf, a lot of more of a brown. I get more of a little bit more of a russet color here. A little bit more of a reddish brown coming off of this. Okay, so let's move on then and talk now about our liquor. Get this out of the way because we have two liquors that look fairly similar, but holding them up to the light, looking at them together side by side. My dry store here, more of an amber, more of an orange reddish type color, while the traditional store, it's getting more of a plummy, slightly purplish type color to it. This would be something like a deeper, a black tea type color. Okay. This one's got some more of the shung pu'er type smells coming off of it. Something that is just giving a hint still of damp hay, wet hay. This one, on the other hand, has moved over, and it's getting more of a almost of a chocolatey type note. There's something that's again earthy and slightly chocolatey about that. So let's compare these two. I'll set these here so that let's go ahead, and I'm going to try the dry store because I believe it's probably a little more subtle, and I don't want it to I don't want the other to mask over anything from it yet. Good thing to note, if you are comparing two teas at once, try to pick what you feel will be the heavier, stronger type of tea. Do that one last so that it doesn't mask or overpower some of the lighter components, the subtle components of a lighter tea. So let me give that one more try. Let's see. Now let's start with the dry stored here. It's got a higher note of astringency, which comes out as kind of a like I said, a zesty. It's moving away from that wet hay, that green shung pu'er type of component. There's still some of that there. But it's becoming smoother, it's becoming milder, it's becoming more mellowed, so that what you have is a little bit of astringency that just kind of tingles the tongue, enlivens it, and so you're left, let me give it one more shot here. You're left with something that in your mouth that feels zesty. It's got a blankety type texture to it. I mean, it does coat the tongue. It doesn't feel creamy. It just feels, with that astringent aspect to it, it feels, it's not harsh. It just feels zesty. It feels like a citrus juice washing over your tongue. There's that bite, a little bit of a kind of a bite to it. The aftertaste carries on that zesty component, combined with the fading hay notes that I talked about, but still sweet and more juice-like, fruit juice-like, and zestier. While this one, the traditional store, again, earthier. So it gets that kind of, if you were to soak mushrooms in water and then squeeze that water out, you get this kind of mushroom juice kind of component. Combined with that, again, it does feel kind of earthy. That earthiness hasn't fully developed. That earthiness can, in some teas, moves on to kind of like almost a chocolatey type texture. This one is moving that direction, but it's got a little bit more of a watery type component to it. And then when it hits the back and the aftertaste, something about it just comes off as I said, kind of watery. The aftertaste seems to kind of taper off. There's an indication, and I can't quite explain it, it's a little bit of that wateriness and a little bit of some of the aftertaste that just feels a little acidic, and this one just feels like it does have a heavier acidity to it. Okay, it feels like it's going to hit on my stomach, and it's going to cause heavy acidity. For me, I identify with, or I associate with, this feeling that my stomach is empty and it starts growling, and that there's the beginnings of that. Although I believe that this one has overcome a lot of that and is moving past it to a smoother, more refined type of tea. So this, again, this is what, about 10 years of storage for both of these kinds of teas, and you can see what happens to them when you store them in different ways. I mean, if you were to ask me right now which one I were to prefer, I would have to lean a little bit more towards the dry storage. So there are those who will say that dry storage is the more valuable. It gives you the more lasting and the greater glimpse of the original tea than the traditional storage. But again, there are fans of the traditional storage as well. So come back. I hope this was valuable to you. If you're looking at exploring the subtleties of what pu'er is and how it's stored, collected, and made. If you're thinking of buying pu'ers, these are the kind of things that you may want to keep in mind, because storage does affect the value, the final taste and profiles of this kind of tea. And come back and join us. Share your thoughts and your experiences here at Walker Tea Review.